Paul Manafort, Julian Assange, both denying the Guardian report that they had met on 3 separate occasions. Jerome Corsi saying he will not sign something that is not true in some plea deal offered to him, he claims, by Robert Mueller, in connection with what he knew and what he and Roger Stone were communicating about in the lead up to the 2016 presidential election. And on top of all of that, we just have, what's going to happen next. The president had put out answers to specific questions, one of them apparently having to do with whether or not the president had any conversation with Roger Stone about the issue of what might be released by Julian Assange. Roger Stone just telling us moments ago that there was no such conversation, and the president answered correctly. Anyway, here to get to the bottom of this, well, what are the legal aspects that are in play here? Because when Robert Mueller, if he's offering Jerome Corsi, as Corsi claims, some type of plea deal, then that's interesting to one count of perjury or lying and even the possibility of only probation. But he's not going to sign something that's not true. Remember back, Lieutenant General Flynn said the FBI agents and James Comey himself, Peter Strzok amongst them, all did not believe he lied to the FBI. But he was going bankrupt, had to sell his house. I believe the screws were being turned on him, probably pressuring him with some type of threat against his son who he was in business with. This happens all too often. And we call it, as my friend Gregg Jarrett, who joins us now, calls it testa lying. Say what they want. You get off with no sentence. You get off with a light sentence. But both Manafort and Corsi are saying, no, we're not going to play that game. Also with us, Andy McCarthy, Fox News contributor, columnist, National Review, former, by the way, assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York. Welcome, both of you. Andy, we've gone back and forth about this, and, it reminds me of like Sammy the Bull Gravano, who, he kills, 18, 19 people. And they make a deal, and he doesn't go to jail if he testifies against Gotti. How do you trust the guy when you're bribing him with a get-out-of-jail-free card in that particular case? Maybe more dramatic, but do you see that happening here?
Sean, the vital difference between what you just described in terms of Gravano and what we're dealing with here is that Gravano actually pled guilty to a crime. That is to say, to a scheme, to a conspiracy. What a prosecutor does in a real criminal case, when the prosecutor has an actual conspiracy that he's investigating, is he brings the cooperator in, and the cooperator testifies or allocutes in his guilty plea to the existence of the conspiracy. He says, here's the crime that we agreed to commit. I was a member of the Gambino family at Cosa Nostra. Here was the boss. Here was the underboss. This is the crew I ran. These are the crimes I committed. And that way, you have the structure of the criminal enterprise. You've got it all described. You have everybody's role in it, right? Here, what we're dealing with is an investigation of no crime. So they don't have, what they're doing is they're investigating the seamy underbelly of American politics, the kind of stuff that goes on in campaigns. And even if Mueller had his dream version of events here, let's say Wikileaks was in contact with Jerry Corsi, who was in contact with Stone, who told the president that they had Hillary Clinton or John Podesta's emails. What's the crime?
Because I don't think anybody knew it was
there.
So this is important because I'm watching all of this and I'm asking myself, somebody says that they have something that is damning op research that's going to hurt the other party. Now, I think if 435 members of Congress, 100 U.S. senators get a phone call and the phone call says, we got information that is damaging to your opponent, do you agree with me? Probably all 535 would say, what do you got? And go and meet such a person.
Of course they would, because that's the way politics goes in America. But my point is that they are criminalizing something that is not criminal activity. That's the reason that they have to plead them guilty to false statement counts. I agree with you that Sammy Gravano got a disgraceful sentence, but at least he pled guilty to racketeering. At least he pled guilty to the crime that they were investigating. Here, they're not investigating a crime. So they have to plead everybody guilty to false statements counts. And Sean, if you were a prosecutor building a case that you intend to have a big bang at the end, do you think the way you go about that is to plead all your important witnesses to lying to the FBI? You want to put people on the stand that the first thing that the jury's going to hear and the most enduring thing they're going to hear is that the guy's a liar and can't be trusted? Nobody builds a case that way.
Gregg Jarrett.
Well, Jerome Corsi sent me the plea offer that he received from Robert Mueller. And count number 1, false statement. It begins by saying Jerome Corsi did willfully and knowingly make a materially false, fictitious, fraudulent statement to wit, and then it identifies 3 things he said. Those 3 things are different than emails that he happened to have. And the lawyer responded, Corsi's lawyer responded by saying, my client did not have the benefit of reviewing his emails. And once he did that, he amended his statements to your office. And now you're asking him to admit that he lied when, in fact, he simply didn't recall a couple of the emails.
He's 71 years old. Look, I'm much younger. If you ask me who was on my show next week, well, I honestly don't think I could recall. I don't think I would.
I'll give you an example. I went back because I had some vague recollection that I wrote about Wikileaks in 2016 during the summer. And so I research it. I go back through my emails. I go through my column. I wrote a column, which I don't remember writing. And
by the way, Andy, you know that's true, right? How does anyone remember what the hell you did in 2016? I don't even know where I was.
Sean, wait a minute now. Sean and Greg.
It was based on emails and information that I sent out, trying to get the same information from WikiLeaks. Now, I don't remember sending them. So if I had testified yesterday, I'd be in the same position as Jerome Corsi.
Andy, you want to jump in on that?
I just was going to say that, I remember every word of every column, and I expect everyone else to remember every word.
That's ridiculous. You do not. Anyway, but let's go back to this document describing Corsi's activities, and I want to just ask if it's a crime. It says, on or about July 25th, 2016, person 1, we believe now to be Roger Stone, sent an email to Corsi with the subject line, get to the founder of Organization 1, we believe to be WikiLeaks, meaning Assange. The body of the message read, get to the founder of the Organization 1, at the Ecuadorian Embassy in London, they're not really hiding it, and get pending Organization 1 emails. They deal with Foundation allegedly. So somebody gave him it sounds like somebody gave him a tip. Hey, this guy might have information that deals with the Clinton Foundation. That's how I read it.
Right. Yeah. And if it was a crime, they would have asked Jerry Corsi to plead guilty to conspiracy to commit espionage. They're describing an operation to get somebody's clause on opposition research, which people may think is icky, but is not illegal. And again, Sean, I come back to the same thing. The reason that they're pressuring him to plead guilty to a false statement is in order to camouflage what they're doing as if they were investigating actual crime. But what's going on here is they're investigating a non-crime. They trip people up and they get them to falsely explain, or as they put it, inaccurately explain what happened. And what the media then runs out and reports is that Mueller is doing an investigation of Trump collusion with Russia, and everybody's pleading guilty.
Isn't this what we call a classic? Isn't this a classic perjury trap? In other words, they can't get you on the underlying crime. So what it teaches, I guess, everybody else is, even though you might be inclined, as I normally would be, if the FBI wanted my help, I would want to help them. But if I'm risking my own life and a charge of perjury, if I don't accurately remember something, I don't even know what I did on TV last night. And I'm like,
and Corsi's mistake is twofold. First of all, he should not have volunteered to testify. He should have said no when he was asked. And second of all, he should have reviewed his emails before he testified. That's his mistake. But nevertheless,
what if he didn't save them?
Well, he actually deleted them, but then he was able to gain access, as you often are, through deleted emails that are nevertheless kept. But, I mean, the point is that if Robert Mueller decides to charge Jerome Corsi with making a false statement, he'll never be able to prove it, I predict, because he'd have to show that it was willingly and knowingly made. Well, the defense of Jerome Corsi, as it is for many people, is that I didn't knowingly make a false statement. I didn't remember emails that I sent. Period.
But isn't it an act of bravery? I mean, pretty much what it seems Mueller's team was offering. You plead guilty to one count of lying, and we won't even oppose the possibility that you just get probation. So Corsi says, I'm not going to lie. Manafort, he says, I'm not going to tell you what you want to say. Greg, you coined the term, well, I've heard it before, test the lie. In other words, they're sitting there across the table from you, basically telling you what they want to hear. And all you have to do to save your own ass is say what they want to hear. And if you do, you're going to benefit. Instead of the rest of your life in jail, maybe it's going to be, 2 weeks like Papadopoulos. But to both of them, to both say no, because they can't go along with something that's false, they're both older gentlemen. It seems to me that that's a pretty principled stand, knowing that this might be the rest of their lives in jail.
They're being principled, and the special counsel is being unprincipled because he doesn't care about the truth, and he's using the tactics of bribery and extortion to try to get somebody to capitulate. And Corsi, and I think Manafort now, are refusing to do so.
A quick answer on that, Andy, then we'll take a break.
Yeah, to capitulate on what? That's I mean, what Greg outlines, sure. But the thing is, what if they admitted what Mueller wanted? It's still not a crime. What they're doing is they're criminalizing what they do in a political campaign. It's not like, somebody agrees with Mueller's version of events and finally we have the big hacking conspiracy. They don't have it.
I want to ask you about that when we get back. I want to ask you about, because the New York Times also published this information, as did other papers, other news sources. And there was a case in the past where it became a big deal. I'll explain that when we get back. All right, as we continue, Andy McCarthy, Gregg Jarrett are with us. Let's talk about other publications that did the same thing that Wikileaks did. They got the information, they got the emails, DNC, Podesta, didn't they all print them? Why are they less culpable than WikiLeaks doing it, Andy?
They're not. They're.
We have a Pentagon.
If WikiLeaks was involved, if WikiLeaks had an understanding with Russian operatives that there would be hacking and WikiLeaks would take the hacked information and put it out, then WikiLeaks may have a hacking problem. They may be involved in a hacking conspiracy. That doesn't mean that other people who take what they have and run with it have committed a crime. I remember when this came out, Sean, Marco Rubio, I think, came out and said nobody should rely on this stuff and nobody should, publicize it because it's stolen material. And he wanted to be like the last honest man. But the way things work in America, everybody uses this stuff, and the media regularizes it by publishing it.
I think that's a good point. And on the other side of this, if you guys don't mind, I want to hold you over a few more minutes and get into historically why I think this is important and what it means for freedom of the press and those that are given information like this. 800-941-SEAN. We'll continue more with Gregg Jarrett and Andy McCarthy on the other side.
Sean Hannity talks to the people involved in the top stories of the day, every day. Sean Hannity is on.
All right, 25 now till the top of the hour. It's getting more interesting by the hour, by the minute, by the day, and Robert Mueller has had two setbacks now in the last couple of days, one with Paul Manafort. Also, apparently, along with Jerome Corsi, had joint defense agreements with the White House, which means a lot of the information was going back and forth. Mueller's claiming the cooperation agreement with Manafort has been breached. And in the case of Corsi, he's saying that he refuses to take a plea deal in which he would be forced to lie about something. I want to get into the issue and maybe use the Pentagon papers as a case in point, Andy, to explain to people exactly why this is not a crime, even if it did happen as it relates to Jerome Corsi or Roger Stone? Why would you say it's not a crime?
Well, Sean, maybe the best example for people would be like a diary, right? You have a diary in your house. I come in and I steal the diary out of your house, and I give it to Gregg, and Gregg runs with the information on it. Now, Gregg didn't deputize me to go steal it. He didn't know I was going to take it, but he finds the information interesting. He publishes it. Now, I've committed a crime because I stole it from you. Gregg hasn't done anything wrong. Now, you could say maybe he's done something unethical or something that you think is icky because you've put personal information in your diary and he's not respecting your right to privacy as you see it. Sure, fine, but he still hasn't committed a crime.
Well, let me ask you specifically in this case, because I interviewed Assange on radio and on TV, and I asked him repeatedly, I'll play it for you if you want, whether or not he got this information from Russia. Now, one caveat, people in the intel community, other sources I have, said it absolutely was, maybe it wasn't directly from Russia or a state party, as he said, but it could have been a third party cutout, if you will. In other words, somebody that is not associated with them, but really is doing their bidding. But here's what Assange said.
Russia give you this information or anybody associated with Russia?
Our source is not a state party. So the answer for our interactions is no.
You did not get this information about the DNC, John Podesta's emails. Can you tell the American people 1,000% you did not get it from Russia or anybody associated with Russia?
We can say, we have said repeatedly over the last 2 months that our source is not the Russian government and it is not a state party.
Our source is not the Russian government.
So, in other words, let me be clear. Russia did not give you the Podesta documents or anything from the DNC.
That's correct.
All right. Now, Andy, just using your example of you giving something to Gregg, and Gregg maybe unethically but not illegally, publishes that something, and maybe you're on the hook. What if something is brought to Wikileaks by whatever source, but it happens to be truth that they're publishing? You may not like it. It may be secrets. It might be, I can't believe we as a country have not developed cyber security. We get hacked all the time. It's insane that we have not built up a better defense system for our government, which also raises the question of Hillary's emails and how unsafe that was in a bathroom closet. But when he says that, if what he is saying is true and this was offered to him, is he, Gregg, using your analogy? Did he just receive it from somebody and he published what somebody gave him because he believed it to be true?
The best example is the Pentagon Papers case. The documents about the Vietnam War were stolen by Daniel Ellsberg. They were given to the New York Times and the Washington Post that published them. The Post and the New York Times are insulated from prosecution. They're publishing something that's a matter of public interest, even though they were stolen. And that principle of the Pentagon Papers cases stood for a very long time. We don't prosecute people for trying to find out information, especially news organizations that are in the public interest, even though they originally might be stolen information. And the same can be said here. Let's assume that the documents were stolen and given to WikiLeaks, and then they publish. Corsi was trying to do exactly what you did, trying to find out information. If you read the count against him, it says he reached out to WikiLeaks. All right, so did you. So did I. So did hundreds of other journalists across America during the summer of 2016, because Julian Assange said he's got some stuff, and it's going to be damaging to Hillary Clinton. So everybody was trying to find out what it was. And so was Jerome Corsi. It's not a crime.
Why, Andy, then would, in the sense, if this is offered to WikiLeaks, and I know they view themselves as a news organization, if it's given to them, why wouldn't they be in the same position as the New York Times and the Washington Post in the Pentagon Papers case?
Well, Sean, I don't know that I accept Assange's explanation that he didn't get it from Russia. If you take at face value what he said, and if it turns out, as you qualified before, if what he's saying is true, then I agree with Gregg's analysis of it. He's just like a journalist.
What if, all right, let's say his source was a Russian cutout. Let's say it's that. Does that matter where he got it from?
I think it depends on whether he knows and whether you have an arrangement that you can properly describe as a conspiracy. In other words,
how is that different though than the Pentagon papers?
What do you mean? In other words,
they were stolen. They were stolen documents. They were printed.
Yeah, but if you're encouraging people to do the theft and there's proof of that,
let's say he didn't encourage it. Somebody came to him and offered it to him.
Well, that's a different thing, right? That's like somebody takes information. What I'm saying is there's a lot of this is not a one-off with WikiLeaks, right? They have a lot of information that they've put out in the past, and there's a lot of people in the intelligence community long before any of this happened that thought that they were an arm of Russian intelligence, and I don't think that that's ever been disproved. It certainly hasn't been disproved.
Listen, I know people that believe that with all their heart and soul, and I don't have an answer because it's way above my pay grade. But then let me take it a step further and ask, if in fact they got this information, however they got it, and they published it, and if they didn't encourage it, you're saying there's no crime associated with that, and that precedence of the Pentagon papers would hold.
Yes, if there's no conspiracy, Sean, I don't understand why giving it to WikiLeaks would be different from giving it to me. You know, there's either a crime or there's not underneath it all.
Yeah, and Greg, to take it even maybe a step further, if they really wanted to find out where they got it from, why didn't Mueller first of all, why didn't, the interesting thing is he never went after Hillary Clinton, and real Russian lies really used to propagandize the American people, bought and paid for Russian lies, then a fraud committed on 4 FISA courts and 4 separate applications, pertinent information withheld from those judges, and then of course she was exonerated and without an investigation, and then we've got surveillance and unmasking and leaking raw intelligence abuse here. But let's just, for the sake of argument here, say that in the case of WikiLeaks, that they did what any other paper would do, or any other.
And Mueller admits it.
But why didn't they ask? Well, here's my question: why didn't they ask Julian Assange?
Well, they should have. The first thing you do is you ask Julian Assange.
There's no indication anyone. Wouldn't he be the one guy? I'm sorry to interrupt. Wouldn't he be the one guy that knows where he got it from? Wouldn't he be able to prove where he got it from?
He would, but on the statement of offense, first page, Mueller declares the theft of campaign-related emails and other documents was by the Russian government's main intelligence directorate of the General Staff, the GRU. So Mueller declares this was the theft was by.
Okay, let's say that's true, but that doesn't mean that's where they got it from.
That's right. If the Russians gave it to WikiLeaks. And Jerome Corsi and others, including yourself, try to find out information and details about that, you're not committing a crime. No. The GRU committed a crime, but nobody else did.
All right. Listen, you guys are both fascinating. I mean, this really is getting interesting to me, and it seems like there's a certain desperation to this that I think is going to be revealed in pretty short order. We'll find out. Andy McCarthy, thank you. Gregg Jarrett, thank you. We appreciate you guys spending the extra time with us.